All right, welcome. This is the first installment of our Team Draft podcast. This is for our fellows project at Severn School, and it's a project that we decided at the beginning of last year that we wanted to do a lot of work with statistics in the NFL draft, and we'll get into kind of our inspiration in a little bit, but this is going to be the first installment of about 5 or 6 podcasts where we're going to take you through our entire process of modeling the NFL draft and using statistics to look at the NFL draft. And then, we'll make our own mock draft for the 2022 draft. And then on draft night this year, we will have a live podcast watching the draft picks as they come in, for the first night of the draft, watching those couple hours and talking about each pick, kind of like the people on TV. So we're super excited for that, and we'll just introduce ourselves.
I am Campbell Grimes. I'm a senior at Severn, and I've been really excited to do this project because I am a huge football fan. I've played football at Severn since 7th grade, was a senior captain this year, and have also loved diving into statistics along with football. JP and I are both taking AP Stats, and we're really excited to get underway with this podcast.
Yeah, and I'm JP. I've been at Severn for 8 years now, and I've been a football fan every single one of them. I'm a steadfast fan of the Ravens, and so I've enjoyed the success over the last couple of years, and so it's really inspired me to look at football in a different way. A lot of the media I consume is around football, and so that was kind of our jumping off point, that we both knew we liked football, and we both knew we can't just talk about football for a whole entire year. So let's bring in another one of our passions was statistics. So we're kind of that's kind of where everything started. But we're really excited to talk about where this project has taken us, what we've learned about football throughout this project, what we've learned about data collection and statistics throughout this project, because that's been a lot more that we've learned about. Coming in, we weren't super knowledgeable. We started this project before we even started any stats class, so we had to have a lot of help along the way, and we learned a lot about statistics and things like that. But I think for both of us, it's definitely lit a passion, in that kind of area to look at this, and something we really enjoyed. So, we'll kind of just start with what kind of inspired us and what our project, an overview of what our project is.
Yeah, so kind of as JP just touched on a little bit, our big goal with this project was to find the intersection between our two passions that we're looking at in the world of football and the world of data and statistics. And so as you look at the world of football, you kind of hear maybe the words violent, dangerous, reckless, because it has that connotation of a reckless game. And we wanted to look at it in a very different light, because recently there's been a lot of focus in the game of football around analytics and how statistics have begun to drive the game off the field, as you see giant organizations bringing in just basically stats guys to look at what makes a good football player and how you can get the best football players on your teams going from the NFL draft.
Right, and that's definitely something, especially recently, if the listener out there, if you have any interest in the NFL, you would definitely heard that the draft is coming up. It starts on I believe it starts on the April 28th. It's currently April 15th. So, with it, like everything surrounding the NFL right now is basically about the NFL draft. And so certainly one of the, you see all the mock drafts and things like that, but almost everybody's talking about stats right now. So we think that's pretty cool, because that's what these players are being picked out of. They're picked based on their film and based on their stats. And so, seeing that there's this massive introduction to stats in the world of the NFL, game by game, things like that. And it's something that had already kind of been exhibited in the MLB, because that's a very stat-driven league, and it's now being brought to the NFL, which is a little bit harder to do. We were like, we decided, this is something that people use stats for all the time for the draft, and it's something that was kind of random. So we were like, well, if anything can explain it, it's probably the numbers. And so we decided to take those two ideas of the randomness of football and the randomness of the NFL draft, and tried to explain it with numbers that we collected. So that's kind of the idea behind it, is that idea that there's this revolution of statistics that's going on right now, and that's just, that's really cool to us because it explains the game of football as kind of this art form, as this intellectual piece of art, besides just, as Campbell said, the reckless, the dangerous parts of it. And so that's just really cool, to be a part of. And
so with this series of podcasts, we're going to be mostly talking about our modeling, which is our final product from all our research over this year, all our data collection on previous draft classes. And we've developed a model to grade players based upon their NFL Combine statistics and their college statistics. So we're going to be talking about that model. We're going to walk through how we developed that model and the process that went into it in these next couple podcasts.
Right, and so just kind of like something that, I just thought of, to kind of show the importance of these kind of numbers. It's not just people, a lot of people say that film is the most important thing. Yeah, people might be watching film. But you look at a guy like Kyle Hamilton in the upcoming NFL draft. I mean, this is a guy that people were projecting to go top 5, top 4. They were saying besides, it's a safety. Safeties usually don't go that high. And, besides, the top players in the draft, he was looked at as one of the best prospects in years. And then following the NFL Combine, where he ran a 4.7 something, he might fall out of the top 10. So that just kind of shows you how important, these numbers are viewed as. And so, that's what we're trying to do is we're going to, in these podcasts, we'll talk about how, how do you look at a guy like that? That's on film, he looks like this incredible player that every team would want. But it turns out, he runs 140-yard dash and he's fallen 5-10 spots down the board for a team that may mean a better team may pick him up, but it also means he's losing millions and millions of dollars, in the short run. So that's just an example of, kind of the importance of these numbers that we're really excited to look at, and, what's going to factor into our stats, is those numbers at the NFL Combine, their 40 time, but more than that, a lot of people just look at 40 time, and some players are just picked because of their 40 time. I just watched a video about John Ross and, kind of what happened to him in the NFL. And he had this incredible 40-yard dash, the fastest of all time. And, of course, he, as he ended up falling off and never really did anything. So, how does that guy, that he's the kind of guy that's going to mess up our model. He's got these amazing numbers, and sometimes things just don't work out. So that's kind of the intricacies of what we have to work with. Is we have numbers without really any context, and do they mean a lot? Do they mean nothing? That's kind of what we're trying to figure out here.
Yeah, I feel like we found quite a few speedy wide receivers kind of messing up our modeling. And so we also wanted to talk about today our data collection, which is just the vast majority of our project is just grunt work with data, because there is so much data that needs to be taken in order to figure out what model we wanted to create. And so our data collection has come from the 2012, 2013, and 2014 NFL drafts. And we have been taking each player in that draft class who went to the Combine. We're taking every single one of their metrics found at the Combine, and then we're taking their 2 last seasons, and we're gathering all of their statistics from the 2 previous seasons they played in. And with that, we're using those statistics to create our model by throwing all those statistics into Excel. And then after we bring together all those statistics in Excel and clean them up a little bit, we're taking them to our modeling site, which is Stata, which we're going to talk about a little bit, how we came to that site, and why we chose Stata over some of the other modeling softwares to create our model.
Right, and so something that Campbell and I definitely remember fondly is, I think it was one of the first days that we were accepted into this program, and we had our meeting with our in-school mentor, Mr. Starr, and he told us, well, he's done stuff like this before, and he said, well, to model, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take what they did in the past, like Campbell said, their Combine and their college stats, and figure out how that aligns with what they did in the future in the NFL. Because that's really what we're trying to figure out here. We're not trying to pick, where we think these guys may be taken. We're really trying to figure out, where should they be taken based on how good they're going to be? We're going a step past where they will be taken and saying where they should be taken in the NFL draft. And so we have to figure out, based on how well past players performed in the NFL, what stats matter, what stats don't, to how well these current players that we're evaluating, how well are they going to perform. So in order to do that, when Mr. Starr said, well, you need to have some kind of stat that tells you how good every one of these players is in the NFL, we kind of realized our project just doubled. We now have to look at how good they were in the past and in the future, and in the future in the NFL. And so we kind of panicked for a second, but we ended up settling on this process of Pro Football Focus stats. And so how that works is, if you are unaware, Pro Football Focus is a football stat website. Basically, it's for any stat head, stat nerd about football. And they just have people that they hire that just collect stats and create stats and do all these things to kind of evaluate every player. And so what they've done is they have a team of people that watches every single play of every single NFL game, and they grade every player on every play. They say whether they had a good impact on the play or a bad impact on the play. And that kind of, all of those plays, all of your season's plays are grouped into one number. That is kind of your season grade. And so every player, whether you played one snap or whether you played 1,000, 2,000 snaps, you're going to have some kind of grade of how well, on average, you impacted a play. And so we kind of use that as our guide to how good a player was. What we did is we took, if they played in 5 or more seasons, then we use their top 5 grades as kind of their peak of their NFL career, because some guys play in the league a while. They have really bad to start, really bad to end, but they have a really good middle section of their career. That's what we kind of wanted to look at, is where are these players at their best. And so we took their 5 best years, averaged them out if they qualified, if they played enough snaps, because you'll have a guy that plays 1 snap, and we don't really want that. And we averaged those top 5 grades as kind of their best years. And there was obviously weighting, because you want a guy that's going to stay in the league for a while. So if you only had 1 qualifying year, even if you had a really good grade that 1 qualifying year, not really that important. If you had 5 qualifying years, that's really good, because you want a guy that's going to be good for a long time. So that's kind of how, we could have created our own stat for how good a player was in the NFL. But we thought, why even bother? There's people that can do so much more work than we can in the span of a year, watching every single play of every single game. Well, obviously we can't do that. So we took that stat, which was really a great stat and really a great website for us, and used that as kind of our baseline of how good every player is in the NFL.
Yeah, PFF has been a super helpful resource for us. And kind of as JP just touched on, our qualifying, we definitely had some issues initially with qualifying players, because you get some guys who play 100 snaps in a season, but they have an amazing grade. So we had to be careful around that and figure out what made a qualifying player in each specific positions, because some positions you're going to have less snaps than others just naturally. So we're looking at different positions have different amount of snaps that you have to qualify for playing a full season to get a year qualified and have that account towards your PFF score.
Right. And that's pretty standard, among most awards and things like that, for a running back to have, whatever award, they have to have ran the ball this many times. That's pretty standard, so you don't get any of those crazy outliers from players that just played 1 or 2 snaps or things like that.
Yeah. And then, so as we got into the modeling standpoint, we began to realize that we were in way over our heads, and we really didn't know what we were doing in terms of the modeling area of this project, because we had never done statistical modeling. We were both taking AP Stats, but even AP Stats doesn't quite prepare for the type of modeling we're trying to do with this project. So we turned to an outside mentor, Dr. Groves, who's an associate professor of economics at Towson University, and she has been just super helpful for us over these past 9 months, actually. And so with this mentor, we were able to figure out what exactly we needed to do in terms of modeling and how we could best manage with our limited skill sets. So we... per her recommendation, we used the Stata modeling program, because it is pretty similar to Excel and it's not coding dependent, which was important because neither of us know how to code at a high level. We both have a little bit of experience, but nothing that would help us in this sort of high-level modeling. So, and we also thought another thing that was super interesting about Stata is that when you input the commands manually, it gives you the code. So through our use with Stata, we've actually been learning how to code all along, which has been a super cool just kind of tool that we've been able to pick up in addition to the actual modeling that we've been doing with this project.
Right. And just, but, now that we have more time in these kind of podcasts, I'd love to touch a little bit more on exactly what this modeling is, because, one of our worries with this project or something that we want to try to avoid is, the idea that this is just a sports project and it's only for sports fans to understand. And if you don't know what modeling is and you don't know what football stats are, then you're not going to get it. And so now that we have more time with this podcast, I'd love to touch a little bit more on just kind of what is this modeling? So basically, from a mathematical sense, it's basically a very complex linear regression. It's taking previous trends. So, maybe a player has a really, really good, or maybe, let's just look at quarterbacks. Maybe they throw a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yards, but they also throw a lot of interceptions. And then there's a quarterback that throws fewer touchdowns, fewer yards, and fewer interceptions. Well, do you want the guy that's putting a lot of volume with more mistakes or less volume with less mistakes? Well, you can look in the NFL and see, does the less volume carry over or do the more mistakes carry over? What is a thing that's going to carry over from college? What trends do you see, among players that are reckless, kind of just throw the ball all over the field, or the guys that are more conservative? The conservative guys succeed, do the reckless guys succeed? And so you look at past drafts and you look at, all of the stats, you take stats from the reckless guy, you put them in and see how well they played in the NFL. Take stats from the conservative guy, see how well they played in the NFL. And based on that, our model will tell us, well, you really want the conservative guy, or you really want the reckless guy. And based on that, then in the future, that can inform your pick. If you're deciding between, well, we have a guy like Jameis Winston who's going to throw 30 interceptions in a year. We have a guy like Aaron Rodgers who might not get as many yards, but he'll throw a lot of touchdowns. He'll not throw many picks. Obviously,
I think Aaron Rodgers will do pretty well for you.
In this example, obviously you want Aaron Rodgers, but that's the point, is that you don't know. In the past, people have no idea. It's a shot in the dark. You look at a guy that has a lot of numbers, a lot of mistakes. You don't really know what you're doing. And so with this, we hope that this modeling will take all of these stats and kind of create an individual player grade for how well they'll succeed in the NFL. And so through every single player, you'll be able to look at what stats matter. Again, for the combine, everyone's watching every single different workout at the NFL Combine, where they have the 40-yard dash, they have 3 cone drills that kind of test every bit of your athleticism. Well, what actually matters? Clearly in the past, as we talked about, the 40-yard dash, for a lot of players, even if they're fast, it didn't mean they're a good NFL player. John Ross was very fast, but it didn't carry over. So does the 40-yard dash really matter? Well, our model will tell us how much it matters, because it'll tell us, this guy who wasn't as fast but had these attributes performed a lot better. Or this guy that was fast, a guy like Tyreek Hill, he's short, but he's very athletic, very, very quick, but he didn't have the production in college. So, what do you look at in when you're looking for good players in the NFL? What stats are you looking at? That's basically what we're trying to solve here, is where should you be looking to find the best NFL players?
I mean, you take a look at a guy like Cooper Kupp even. He's running, I think he ran like 4.6 at the Combine, and he's a Super Bowl MVP, amazing player, won Offensive Player of the Year last year. And another part of the modeling that we really didn't realize we needed to focus on until we got to talking with our in-school mentor, Mr. Starr, was the modeling aspect, how we needed to model using categories. We couldn't just focus on the overall aspect initially. We had to focus on different parts of the game at each position and then bring all those together in our final model. And say we're looking at the quarterback position, we got to look at the quarterback's accuracy, their intelligence. Are they turning the ball over? Are they throwing interceptions? Are they making bad decisions? Or are they making smart plays, making the safe check down reads in college? We also have to look at athleticism. Are they able to run the ball and pick up yards when they need to when the pocket's collapsing? Are they able to get the ball downfield into tight windows, make the boundary throws as a quarterback that you like to see from an elite level college quarterback and a high-end prospect? And then all the time in college, you'll hear, oh, this guy's just a winner. He wins games.
Right.
And we wanted to take it, like, how does that come into effect in the modeling? And we also, a big part of our modeling that we didn't really know what to do with was how to compare across positions. Because you look at different, it's easy to compare quarterback to quarterback, but how do you compare a quarterback to a fullback or a tight end? How do you compare two guys who do completely different things on the football field? And in order to do that, our Mr. Starr gave us a great idea. And you look at, in his idea, we're looking at contract data. So we're using how much money a guy is being paid in the NFL at the position. So we're comparing the quarterback money to a tight end money. And in that way, we're able to see, oh, quarterback, since your ball's in your hand every play, you're getting the most money of any player on the football field. And therefore, you should be drafted earliest. If you're the best quarterback, you're probably going pretty early because every team needs a good quarterback. If you're the best tight end, you might go fairly early, but you might not go number one overall if there's a better quarterback out there or a highly rated left tackle, a blindside tackle.
Right.
So
right. Really, I mean, it's a test of value. You saw with like someone like Saquon Barkley, everyone was criticizing. Not everybody because he was a generational talent, but people were questioning: do you pick a running back this high? And obviously, looking back, you might say probably not. You shouldn't have picked him that high. And so, how do you really quantify that value in a player?
I mean, even with a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, he came out of the gate he was picked number 4 in the draft. And he came out of the gate and was amazing. Everyone loved the pick. And looking back at it now, there's a lot of questions. Was that the right pick? Was it a good decision to sign him to a pretty big contract? And you look at how the Cowboys have done poorly in the playoffs in the past few years when they've made it and haven't even made it deep once in ages. And you look and see maybe that wasn't such a good pick.
Right. So we're looking at how do you quantify that value? Well, I'll tell you exactly how you quantify that value. You see how much the teams value each position. Even if we have a generational running back that has, some of the best grade, our model will give him the best grade that we've ever seen. He still probably isn't going to go number 1 because teams know not to pick a running back with the number 1 overall pick. So we use that contract value to look at, okay, well, even though this running back's a lot better than this quarterback, they're going to pay this quarterback a lot more. So that means that he's probably higher value. So that means he's probably going to go earlier in the draft. So that'll tell you, how important that is. And so we're really excited about that because obviously, that's been used before, but that's something we didn't even consider at the beginning. And that's really cool for us. And so that's kind of what our overall modeling process has looked like. And we will, like I said, get into a mock draft in a couple later episodes, and we'll talk about each one of these players and why maybe a guy like the receivers might fall just out of the top 10 maybe if they don't have the same kind of value as these quarterbacks. We can touch on it a little bit. I know this year's quarterback class is not rated very highly, but you still may see 4 or 5, 3 to 4 quarterbacks drafted in the first round. Well, this is one of the worst quarterback classes in years, and you're still going to see that. That's something that's, that should be represented with our contract data because they will get paid the highest, so they will have the highest value, so they will go in the first round.
I mean, you look at a guy like Malik Willis coming out of Liberty. He's not your typical, top 10 pick in terms of how risky a player he might be at the quarterback position, but he very well could go in the top 10 just because quarterbacks are so valuable in this league right now, and you need to have a good quarterback in order to have a good team and have a chance at making a Super Bowl run.
Right. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're finally at the point where we're able to look at this next year's draft and get really excited about it within the next couple weeks. And that's what our process has looked like so far. So we wanted to introduce you guys to that first before we kind of moved on to what we think about the future based on our model, because we want you to know where are these stats coming from, and how are we making these predictions. A lot of people on TV just kind of throw out my model says this. and we wanted to kind of show you what that looks like, or kind of entice you as to why this isn't just a football project. This is really a mathematical project. It's an intellectual project, and it's something that is super important in the NFL right now.
And I think we're pretty much wrapping it up for today for our episode 1, kind of talking about our process. And in our next episode, our plan is to go over modern day football metrics and kind of the analytics we talked about, which gave us our motivation for this project. And also we hope to dive a little deeper into our modeling and into the mathematics behind it and the statistics behind it.
Right. So we learned a lot about stats to this project, and we definitely just want to introduce you guys to all that. But for now, this will be the end of episode 1. Thank you guys so much for listening. We are excited to be back pretty soon with episode 2, and then eventually, like we said, give you our mock draft and our official draft day reactions. So stay tuned for those, and we're super excited.